Hello, 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 and welcome to another one line of code. I am One Lion. This is our regular workday stream. For those of you that were here for Community Day, thank you so much for that. And for those of you that are here now, thank you for that. Today's window that we are looking out of, just because I feel like looking at where this is, we are looking at I can't read that. Las Galeras in the Dominican Republic in November of 2024. That was like last year, man. Reg is still here. Thank you so much for still being here. We are transitioning over to working on work product stuff now. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump over to the desktop. I was still working on getting the project open, which it is open. So this is the lab data import service. Or just import library, I guess, which is the one that we're using. So this data import utility that I was doing on Community Day that is open source is going to be, the same data import utility that I am using in this product, but the actual lab data import part of it is only a work product. So I will replace this with the open source library. Excuse me. Once we get the NuGet package, NuGet packages created and published to NuGet, then I will switch this over to using the NuGet reference to this import utility. Before I do create the first NuGet package for that, though, I will apply any changes that I have been making in this version of it, and you will see some of those improvements today. And hopefully we'll add more improvements. My goals for today are cleaning up some of the UI quirks, like it gets a little, the hover sync works just fine, but it's still processing slowly. I don't know how else to word it. You'll see what I mean when we launch the app. And two, it would be really cool to start adding some of the other value transformation types, like the conditional transformation or the constant value mapping type. So those would be nice to have added already. So those are some goals for today that we will be trying to accomplish. So here is the current state of the app. You may have seen that you can now see the import utility as a static GitHub page, GitHub static pages page for the project. And we're essentially using this UI as the basis for the majority of the UI in the lab data import. It's just that the lab data import will have things specific to importing the data and dumping it to a database. Okay, there it goes. It just ran and on screen. On screen, close enough. But yeah, how are you? How's your day going? How is Friday? For those of you that are around and feel like typing. If you do not feel like typing, please don't interrupt yourself. Okay, I'm picking a file. How is that folder? Oh, I just restarted my computer. President Usher says I managed to have a short meeting today. Boo. Boo, we do not like meetings. Meetings are for people that don't want to get work done. Open file location, please. Okay, hopefully we won't suffer from the same video lag stuff that was happening earlier. I did restart Angie, so you should be good to go. I have a daily meeting, but that's usually it. That's how mine were. No, that's a lie. I had a daily stand-up and a weekly meeting with another team that we were collaborating with, and a weekly client meeting, and I often got pulled into meetings that I didn't sign up for, opt into. Okay, so everything that you saw from before is still working with the dragging and dropping of the file. The thing that I did fix was when we created that new, not created, when we updated the event callback for when you pick a file, the dockable toolbar was not getting refreshed, was not getting updated. So then I did a quick workaround, which was let's just see when the dockable toolbar is rendered and do an invoke async status change so that it'll re-render and show itself if there is now a file picked, because that's the condition. If there is no file picked, then the table doesn't render. The dockable toolbar is there, it's just not rendered. The HTML for it is not rendered. But that means that it's already done its life cycle of on after render. So here I am picking a file, and now it renders. But what was happening before was that the table itself was the thing that was trying to tell the dockable toolbar, or it just raised an event that said I'm rendered. And so the dockable toolbar saw that event and then it refreshed, but then the dockable toolbar would show up and then it would disappear and then it would show up again. And I'm like, why? And then what I found is that the dockable toolbar will get that callback will get called 3 times. In fact, it was getting called 5 times earlier. And the first time it got set to non-null, second time it got set to null, and third time it got set to non-null. And this is a state variable, the active data table. So it was really weird. I did fix up some things, but the thing that really made this work better, oh man, yeah, that's really bad. The thing that really made this work better was telling the data table to not report that it's rendered unless the data table markup, the table HTML markup, was part of the DOM. And so if we now look at our data table display, on after render, so this will happen on every render, we will update the table is rendered value to not only the data table not being null, because if it's null, we won't render a table, but also that the table HTML element is rendered in the DOM. That way, that shows up first before we even get a dockable toolbar to do anything with that, with the data. So here you can see the hover effect thing happening, and the issue that I want to fix now, which is just how terrible the performance is for hovering. But what I did achieve with what it's currently doing is when we have the preview table. Oh yeah, and there is one more thing that I want to fix too. When we have the preview table, we synchronize their scrolling. So if I scroll on the preview side, then the imported data side also scrolls, because these rows are 1 for 1. They should match up, or they do match up, not even should, they do match up exactly. And then also if I scroll on the imported data side, I wanted to scroll on the preview input. The other thing that I wanted was when I hover over a row on either one, then the opposite one also hovers. And so that does work, but you can see that it's getting called on every single thing that I hover over, on every row that I hover over, and it processes every single one of those messages before it stabilizes. So what we need is a debounce on our hover, and we need it to just be faster, you know? And then the new thing that I noticed before the community day stream was that we're not getting our templates back. And the reason we're not getting our templates back is because when we do the request to get a template from the server, so hopefully we'll be running in WASM when I refresh, clear you out. This should do a HTTP request to the server. I haven't been seeing any network activity lately though, even when it's running in Blazor WASM, and it should be doing a HTTP request, but it should send a request to the server that says, give me back any templates that were made for this set of fields. Yeah, I don't see the HTTP request. But what I did notice eventually was that the request that gets sent to the server doesn't include the imported fields. So there is no collection of fields being sent to the server, which is not helpful because it uses the set of fields that are being imported as the thing to look up in the server in the database for any templates. Anyway, that's it. So that's our state of affairs, and we're going to tackle each of these things. I am suddenly getting some rendering errors, so let's look at this. Invoke async failed. I don't know where I got invoke async from. Oh, from here. Line 28 of module base. And that is the one for, wait, there is no line 28. Are you sure you're using the right code? Oh wait, this is JS module base. My bad. My bad. Am I sure I'm looking at the right code? Line 28 is the await module task invoke async. And so this is from our loaded JavaScript module that should have whatever method it's looking for, but this one is saying that the task was canceled. Okay, so this makes sense to me. I thought that I set a debug on the hover effect. And so for every single time that the hover effect debounce cancels the action, we should be getting an error because I told it to throw if, I mean, it's really hard to tell. Throw if canceled. It doesn't look like it. It's really hard to tell. Let me select this. That way it doesn't automatically scroll. I do a bunch of these. At least one of those should have canceled. Okay, and then if we continue scrolling, there are no more items. So it did not throw any more exceptions, but it kind of looks like it's disconnected too. And not only that, but this looks like it's still running as Blazor server, which means it didn't switch over to Blazor WebAssembly. Did I not update program.cs and tell it that it's allowed to run as Blazor WebAssembly now? Render mode auto. It's an app, my bad. TBD. So TBD had previously stated, and I never hold anyone to, you're allowed to vent. Absolutely. Feel free. Just be mindful of other people, blah, 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 which you are. So you're allowed to vent. Anyway, I never hold anyone to something that they say in the moment. Like if you say, I absolutely love working in teams today, that doesn't mean that you aren't allowed to complain about working on a team or feel different 5 minutes from now, 10 minutes from now, and be like, I hate working on teams. So anyway, previously, that was all precursor to TBD had previously said that he does prefer working in teams with teams as opposed to working solo dev. And so he is retracting that, at least for now. I take it all back. I dislike development teams. I want to retire and live in a beach shack, he says. Again, even if you don't really mean it, you're allowed to say it like you mean it now. Okay, what was I looking for? A taco. I was looking for app.razor. It is here. And again, TBD, if you happen to have the bandwidth, the availability to think and pay attention, we can go through whatever Blazor questions you have. Again, as just my opinionated way to approach making Blazor projects. A very simplified version of my approach at that. We can do that. All right, what is our render mode that we picked? Interactive server. I could have sworn I changed this to auto when Scott told us about the CS proj change. Maybe the CS proj change didn't work. Interesting. Okay, we're going to go back to interactive auto because I really do want to see the HTTP request and not have to debug, run this with full debug. But if gosh, now I want to publish this and see if it still happens. If the issue that I was facing still happens with the new CS proj setting. So the CS proj setting that he had me add was Blazor WebAssembly load all globalization data true, which I had never seen before. It wasn't part of any of the stuff that I found when I was researching my issue. So I'm going to publish to the server because it only happens on the server. So I need to stop the code actually first, which I did. Okay. And I'm publishing off screen because I have the server name and everything in there. It's not a terrible thing if you guys happen to see the server name because it's all locked down. Locked down. That setting name, they embraced meaningful over concise well there. Nice, God. Rich says, in Shinto philosophy, or Shinto's philosophy tells us to treat life as a seasonal occupation. Therefore, I change my point of view randomly and for no reason. Nice. I will not purposefully promote one philosophy over another on this channel. I will give my opinions on occasion, of course. But I have a very FI way of living. Since we were talking about cognitive functions before, I may as well just say it that way. I have a introverted feeling, especially FI in third slot, which is the 6-year-old stubborn, that I hope I've developed a little, and I respect people more, and don't push my ideals on other people too hard, and allow them to be themselves. I keep caveating it, but yeah. I've just found a really, really good way for me to live. And it works really nicely. And I wish everyone had it. Come on, publish. You can do it. I'm going to stop this because it's going to keep trying to load the stuffs. But yeah, I said Scott's name and he appeared. I did not mean to bring you out of lurk if you were lurking this whole time. I don't like forcing people out of lurk either. I need to assemble a dream team. You, TBD, are on my dream team. So I don't have to be on yours. I'm just letting you know that you are on mine. Okay, so we are published. I'm going to rebuild while I test this out. And so the issue that was happening for me when I publish the app and it happens to be running in WebAssembly mode, so I refresh and hopefully it's running in WebAssembly. Oh, it's just going to crash immediately now. Thank you for showing me that. So because I wasn't running in WebAssembly this whole time, I guess I am going to republish after making this change. I didn't realize that I wasn't injecting the lab data state in my client app. Yes, shout out to TBD Gamer. Thank you so much for that, Dukesoft. You're the bestest. So how is it not injected? Lab data client services should include, oh, I need the UI services. Component services is what I called it. Okay, so this gives me my state for the components. And this is all going to need to be in the README for the data import utility, because the data import utility also allows for you to inject a state. It'll first look for a cascading state, then it'll look for a injected state, and then it'll keep its own internal state if neither of those are provided. Okay, so with that, I need to republish. But this is probably, in my opinion, the biggest hiccup when choosing render mode auto is knowing where do you inject your services. Where do you do your dependency injection? And when do each of those run? So for example, program.cs only runs when you are running, when the app happens to run as WebAssembly. Sorry, program.cs in the client project will only run if the app happens to be running as WebAssembly. Otherwise, it'll default to the core application. And I don't have better names for this, but the core application's program.cs. If you're running as WebAssembly with hosted, so not just WebAssembly only, then both the program.cs will run for the browser, for the one that gets shipped to the actual client itself, and then program.cs for the core project will run on the server. And so even if you injected the state, in this case, this state on the server, it needs to be injected on the client project as well. Okay, so once again, it initially starts loading as server. You can tell because there is this WebSocket connection. And then we refresh, and now we're loaded as WebAssembly. And this time we didn't get any errors because state is injected. Oh my gosh. All right, so the issue that was originally happening is when the app is running on the server as WebAssembly, where the server is using the .NET 8.0.11 SDK, Excel data reader uses some globalization stuff that I'm not familiar with. I'm sure I could pick through the Excel data reader NuGet library, since it is open source, and figure it out. But point is, when I tried to load a file, it would give me an error because of Oh, and now the tab is closed, so I won't ever be able to find it again. Wow, that's taking a long time to read. Give me history. Hybrid globalization. Okay, give me this. Because of a hybrid globalization error that happened because they pushed a change with .NET 9 that they didn't intend to make affect .NET 8, that they were planning on adding in .NET 8, but they planned it the right way so it wouldn't affect anything else. Why aren't you loading the file? Oh, what happened? Anyway, point is it didn't give us an error, but it's also not printing out the contents of the file. Gosh. I always click the button thinking that it's going to be on this folder, that it's on my video thumbnails folder. So why aren't you loading? You're stable. I load the file, and the Excel data reader does its magic on the client to turn that file into a data set. But it's not doing that. And it's also not erroring. Like, I don't know what these errors are. The message port closed before the message be received, before the response was received. I don't know what these errors are. But does that mean that nothing in the app works? No, stuff works. Links work. Did it again. Draggy droppy. I don't know. I don't know. Why are you struggling? Doesn't matter. It does matter because I need to have a working version published because I told the users to start trying it in test, which most of them aren't working today. So I was confident publishing it today without affecting anyone that might have been working in it, which would have been exactly 0 people. Give or take 0. So I'm going to republish it using server. That way the published version is still good, but we're still going to keep it as render mode auto. I try to do one thing and then I run into 6 other things that are like, here's a distraction. Look at me, look at me. Ha. Excuse me. I'd like to put my bottle down now. Render mode is only valid when it's a component. Did I somehow... I thought so. You're just not re-rendering, re-updating. Okay. You're good. Save. Save all. Back to the publish screen. Publish. Typey, typey, typey. This time you will build, and you will publish, and you will open again over here. Correct. And then I will rebuild you. And then close and reopen Visual Studio so I get my syntax highlighting back. Okay, so if we refresh the app, then we see that a circuit is created every time, which means that it is constantly running as Blazor server. Is there actually an issue with the Excel data reader suddenly? Or can you read files and display them? How very interesting. Oh, it worked. Why did that take so long? That should not have taken that long. I think something's wrong with my computer. If it runs faster than this in dev, and it has run faster than this on the server. Let's just do a CSV. See how long that takes. Here's a CSV. What does that taste like? Fast. Here's a different Excel workbook. Yeah. So Excel. Weird. That is going much slower than it should. I guess that means that I should have tried a CSV with the published WASM version, but we'll get back to that. Is there a way to see logs or otherwise see why it's taking that amount of time? Potentially. It's not really something that I'm wanting to debug at the moment, but it is a good thought. I could check. What could I check? I don't have anything set up at the moment, but if it does continue in the future, like what I would really prefer to do is actually what I can do real quick while I'm reopening the project is log into the other computer and upload the same files. The computer that doesn't have these weird laggy issues. Test-LDU on acloud.com. And here is my file. Yeah, and it went super fast for the test site. Gosh, man, I want to republish now with the WASM. I'm gonna do it. I won't show you the other computer's screen. I'm remoted into it. It's a completely different computer that is not stream prepared. Okay, let's publish. Like to crick. Publish. Ew, what did he say? That's disgusting. Well, there's stream elements. Calm down. Calm down. If you like development, check out Anna. If you like games, check out Simple Game Dev's game. AKA Artificial. I haven't seen him stream for a while. Hopefully he's doing well. I think I saw last that he was doing a bunch of marketing type stuff, and I hope that means that Artificial is pretty close to launch. I still don't think it's going to launch until after Sector 0, and he wasn't going to launch Sector 0 until he gets 10,000 wish lists on it. But yeah, so check out Anna Sastev. I didn't say much about her, but she's a fantastic developer. Very smart, very enthusiastic about software development. She creates her own everything. If it's software related. For example, she's making a storyboarding or story writing application. She has her own bot. She has her own game engine. All of it. All the things. Okay, this is the republished Blazor render mode auto. Here it is running as WASM. At least we hope it's running as WASM. Just making the rest of us devs look downright unproductive. So true. And then she'll come in and be like, well, I mean, I don't know why I torture myself. It's hard stuff. And then it's like, it's done though. You were able to do it and it just works. Have you seen this? You're able to render 10 million duckies on your screen without issue. Okay, so here it's still not loading the Excel workbook, and on the other computer, loading Excel, it loads. It does load. So here I'm going to refresh, try a CSV. Yeah, I really don't get that. I don't know what's up with Angie. You know what? Here's another thing I could try. Let's clear all of the cache for the test site. Yeah, okay, so that loaded just fine. And now what about Excel? Still struggling, but the CSV loaded, so that's good news. Okay, I'm gonna leave it because the thing that I really cared about was that when it's running as Blazor WebAssembly, it no longer gives that hybrid globalization error that it was giving before, and it is not, thanks to the CSproj property that Scott told us about. Yeah, I'll say it that way. Now we can move on then. Since I did publish, I need to rebuild one more time, close and rip in Visual Studio so we don't have to fight with syntax highlighting. While I'm doing that, President Not Sure is asking, does anyone else have to move where they are working during the day? When the sun comes in from the back and blinds you and creates screen glare? No, just me. I work in the basement and I have blinds. And those blinds are usually closed. Except when I stream. So when I stream, I do open them enough that enough light gets in that I don't have to use a ring light or anything else. The glow from the monitors and that window is enough light. Me. Yes. I live as a mushroom lives. I don't think that's right. And DVD Gamer says, son, my cave does not know this concept. Agreed. Although, because of changes to my lifestyle that I have made, I must admit that I am now a proponent that the human body does thrive on sunlight. As much as I really, really, really don't like being out in the sun, I still think that there are enough benefits, enough harmfulness that you don't want to be out there for too long, but enough benefits from like a 10 to 20 minute walk in the sun. President Usher says, I try to keep a sunlit workspace and the curtains behind me don't work so well this time of year when the sun is low in the sky. So now I'm in my corner office. Is your desk on wheels and you have to actually roll it into a corner? But to be honest though, I do change my work location. I work at this desk, typically on streaming days, and I work at the couch during non-streaming days. And then sometimes if I end this, not even if I end the stream early. On Mondays and Wednesdays when I end the stream at 1:30 my time, I go over there and that's where I do music as well. Breathing. What even is it? Oh yeah, and I guess there is a psychological factor too, since we were talking about personalities. There is a psychological factor to working in dark environments versus working in light environments. It's just that I get so affected by my environment that harsh lighting or even just bright lights or lights in general affect my ability to concentrate. Whereas for most people, it affects their mood. It puts them in a sour mood most of the time. And a little bit of sunlight will go a long way for your mood, potentially, allegedly. When the sun is out, says Dukasoft, I get about 10 minutes of it in my face. So it's not that bad. TBD says, I keep looking at treadmills for under the desk, but I'm too chunky. It's a catch-22. Oh, is there like a... No. I'm saying this in an informational, inquisitive way because I actually wanted to know, but is there a weight limit, I guess, on the under the desk treadmills? Is that what you're saying? I don't mean to inquire or drill you on your weight or anything. But yeah, one thing that you might still do though, TBD, is if you don't have one, get a standing desk. Because just standing, especially if you stand with good posture, that can help with burning calories that you don't normally use during the day. And that's all your body really needs. It doesn't matter if you change your diet. Well, I mean, it does. But diet is the leading factor of this. What I'm trying to get at is your body will eventually equalize and burn the same number of calories regardless of how physically active you are, unless you start doing things that are vastly different than what your normal routine is. But yeah, they have a weight limit. I have a standing desk, but every time I raise it up, I end up with terrified dogs. I'm going to organize my office this weekend to help improve that. Awesome. Yeah, I really like standing at this desk. And then, as I mentioned before, for my own physical health and condition, I'm not losing weight. I've been the same weight for many, many years. So I'm not all about weight loss programs or anything like that. I'm about heart healthy, doing some cardio, doing some HIIT type stuff, and just keeping my body internal health good so that I can continue having a high quality of life. I don't exercise to lose weight, is what I'm trying to say. President Usher says, problem is, it's not about calories in and calories out. It's about what you eat as well. Absolutely. I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. So the types of foods and all of that fun stuff. Okay, I'm Control F5ing because I need to continue on. So yay. Again, I'm going to keep thanking you over and over, Scott, but thank you again for, in this case, the CS Proj property for getting that hybrid globalization thing on. I thought we had already fixed it, but I didn't even change the app back to using render mode auto, so I wasn't really testing it when I pre-published it. Okay, so that is taken care of. No, it's Scott. The thing I would really like to fix next, I have two things that I want to fix at the same time that are equally exciting for me to want to fix. One is the responsiveness of moving the cursor around and not having the hover follow. So in this case, what's happening is the DOM is updating with this hover class. I'm not using the hover CSS selector, pseudo selector. I am specifically using a C# event that says on mouse. Which one did we end up with? On mouse over? I forget. On mouse over. Yes. Okay. So it was the one that President Not Sure was like, on mouse over from the very beginning, and I'm like, oh, on mouse enter. It's like, no, we really meant on mouse over. So on mouse over, actually, I'm going to go back on that now. The reason I went to on mouse over was because when I used on mouse enter, it looked like the mouse was entering and exiting at the same time. But what was actually happening is the on mouse enter happened for TR, and then the mouse pointer, the ray that it shot into the screen said, oh, there's a TD. So on mouse out got called. And so the way that I'm doing it now is I'm not even doing on mouse out anymore, which means that if you move your mouse to the top of the screen, the last thing that you had hovered is going to stay highlighted. And I've accepted that as this is okay. Same thing with if you move down past the bottom of the screen, the last thing that you hovered on will stay hovered, or will stay with this class. I'm okay with that. Problem is that I think on mouse over gets called every single time you move your mouse. So I want to move this back to on mouse enter. And I got rid of the on mouse out, so we don't have to worry about the same behavior happening that was happening before. So that's one thing. It'll only get called once per row. And we can already see a small improvement, but it's still calling it way too many times, but it is a lot faster so far. And then the next thing is if I'm already hovering over another row, by the time the code hits to start rendering this class, then I want to cancel trying to render with that class. I just don't know how to find out where that's happening, especially when it really is relatively fast. I don't see people doing this. Like, I mean, I guess they could, but it's also just not great to begin with how long it takes for your initial hover to happen. So I'm over here and I'm like, all right, what column am I at? And I don't like the lagging behind the mouse. I'd rather have it just be instant. It's just really hard because these two tables are at different levels. This table is inside of another component called dataset, and this table is in the same component as this component, but it's on the same page as the dataset. And so I needed some way for this table to tell that table, update your highlighted row, update your hovered row. And that's what's slowing everything down. So we're going to come to this one next. The first one that I want to fix then is, why is the request to the server when you load a file not sending the imported data? So if we look here, no. If we refresh and we're running in Blazor, in WebAssembly, and we try to load a file after we clear this out, we should see a HTTP request. And the reason we weren't before is because it was running in server the whole time. We should see a HTTP request to the to user templates endpoint, which we do. And that request, the payload, is missing the field descriptors. Why are you suddenly missing the field descriptors when you weren't before? So let's go investigate that, fix it, and move on. Ooh, and let me pick up my meal delivery service stuff from the porch, and I'll be right back. 20 seconds. That was not my blue apron. I hope it's here before I start, before dinner. Before my normal cooking start time. Stairs, am I right? Okay. So here we go. When we pick a file, let's just follow the whole process from the beginning. This is where we get the file from, the file picker. On file picked, no. When this renders, I'll catch my breath in a minute. See, the thing about being healthy and doing exercise every day, and it's only like 30 minutes of exercise a day, is that you will find yourself with more stamina. You'll run out of breath less often. And I need to sit down. I'm kidding. I was acting like I was super out of breath, though. I blame the COVID. Okay. When this renders on initialize, if we are given a what's it called? If we're given a state, a cascading parameter for the state, then we have this component register itself to state. And that, in our implementation, will set the event for this file picker to this specific event callback, which is handle file pick. So we just keep that in mind. Whenever we see on file request changed internal dot invoke async, we will go here and follow this method, but we're going to do this still one step at a time. Dear Dukasoft. So President Not Sure said, yeah, I get more winded lately, and Dukasoft said, my winded issues is more behind me these days. Good job getting ahead of that. Getting out ahead of it. Terrible Dukasoft. Okay, so user picks a file using this input file. Input file comes from the Blazor ecosystem. It's built into current Blazor framework. So you get this input file component for free. When you choose a file, the on change gets fired and you get an iBrowser file out of it, or even a list of iBrowser files if you have multi-select on. And so what we do is we set up our file request, and then we notify file picked, which eventually says if we are also going to include internal, which we are by default, then we notify on file request changed internal. And so like I said, we go over to our state class. And we follow this. And what we do is we populate our file information. So file read state is updated to file selected. So this is just, like I said, an internal state that tells us what the progress of reading this file is. So it's initially set to file selected. We are setting a request to be able to read this file internally to this state class, and then we're performing the file read. The file read, you can see up here what all I am asking for from this state class, and I want a data reader service of some sort. So this file reader, perform file read request, is going to use whatever is injected for that iData reader service to read the file to a data set, essentially. That can be our implementation that we're shipping with the library, or that can be your own implementation, as long as it satisfies iData reader service. So if we have a file Then we set data file equals null. Ah, here's one place where data file is getting set to null. On the first read, data file is already null. And when we do this, we ignore if the existing data file is equal to the new data file that we're trying to set it to, and this is an object equals. Is it? This is an object equals. Then we return, we don't do anything. We don't set any values. We don't notify changes, nothing. Otherwise, if it is changed, then we have the notify property changing. We set the value, notify property changed, and then we return that we did actually change the value of it. So if we did change the value of it, we raise our internal event. And then we also set the active table to the first active, or to the first data table in the data set. That's red. Okay. Still don't know why it's going set the data file and then set it to null and then set it again. But I guess we'll find that out. Okay, so this is where we are first setting the data file. I still have a to-do in here. And we're doing it by calling the data reader service.read import file. We aren't going to step through the code for this because it's essentially just use Excel data reader to convert it from either a CSV or Excel file to a data set. But it can be whatever. Anything that gives us back a data set or an imported data file is what I said. And then if target type is not null, which it won't be because our target type is set at the component level. So when we load here on the data import page, we see that we're setting the target type, which sets the target type in state, which means that we have a target type. So if target type is not null, then for this particular imported data file object, we will do set target type. That way we know, or it will do all of its automated processes for, we now have a data set and we want that data set to map to this type here. So we need to do all of our setups for the field mappings based on that type. So we set up all the field mappings only. We don't do anything with the imported data fields yet. Then what? Then what do we do? Then we say file read is a success. And that's it. And we are done with the perform file read, which means we're done with the handle file picked, which means nothing else happens. That might not be right. I guess we're going to look everywhere else for any handlers, but that isn't right. Tell to me. For our data file picker, on file change, handle selected file or handle file selected, notify file picked. Yeah, so the other one would be the direct event callback on the component, but we can see that for our usage of the data file mapper, for our usage in the data file mapper of the data file picker, all we're doing is clearing the error message if there was one. Ah, okay, so here's where it is. All right, also in our data file mapper page, on data file changed, is registering an event listener called handle data file changed. Which is also setting the target type again. Interesting. Even though in our state class, we're telling it to set the target type if it's not null. And then we are handling state change, which is just invoke async state is changed. Okay, then what else are we handling? On file read state changed, which I didn't see actually getting called anywhere. Oh, it's getting called when we set the property. Okay, so when we set the property for file read state, how was I intending for us to say this? I think file read state, provided it wasn't the previous value, then we will invoke on file read state changed. So on file read state changed, we're only invoking async state is changed. Which one of you guys is going and getting the user templates? None of these. Nobody is going to get the user templates because the user templates are specific to the lab data helper. Or lab data state. So let's go to our lab data import state. On data file change, find user mappings. Here. Okay, so it's got to be in here that the table definitions are not populated by this point, by the time this runs. So if table definitions, are you nullable by chance? No. So if not, table definitions.any table name, we need to do this when the active data table changes. Because we need to compare this to active data table. Got it. Okay, so let's change this around. On active data table changed, which means we also need to make sure we unsubscribe from that instead of... Oh, we don't need to. The reason that I don't need to unsubscribe from that event is managed by the base state class, which this inherits. And at the end, we are setting all handlers to null, all events to null event handlers. So that unregisters the events. And if that's getting disposed, then so is this. So we don't have to worry about that. Okay, so handle find matching templates. Handle active data table changed. If the active data table changed and there are no table definitions with that data table's name, which means that if either active data file is null or active data table is null, do nothing. And actually this one really only cares about the active data table, but the data file is null is specifically so I can get rid of any null check warnings down here. If active data table is not null, there is no way that data file is null. That's a lie. It's possible. Anyway, if either of those are null, we don't do anything. If there are no table definitions for the active data table, which you are no longer nullable, which is pretty much this. Yeah, let's do it like this. Field descriptors. Okay, so if try get data fields, try get field descriptors from table definitions is null for that table name, or wasn't able to for that table name, then that means that the field descriptors is going to be null at that point in time, because this failed. Then we want to force the data file to generate to populate to what did I call this thing? Refresh field descriptors for table. So we'll do false to force it to do it, and then for table will be active table dot table name. All right. Then if it still fails, does anyone have any better options for this type of pattern? And again, if you're busy, don't answer. Don't even tune in. So the pattern that I find myself doing often is try to get this thing from some collection. If I'm not able to get that thing, do the thing that's supposed to populate that collection of stuff, and then try to get it again. I guess one thing I could do is have this thing send back the collection of items that gets populated. So I could have my refresh field descriptors give me back the collection of field descriptors. But that would only work if the collection of field descriptor, or if this method was called on a specific table. We wouldn't want the entire dictionary back. Okay. So you would do it on the refresh field descriptors. What does that mean for me? What does that look like for me? I would allow the refresh field descriptors know if it needs to refresh them or not. Or if it needs to return the collection. It's like the point here is that the try get field descriptors is the thing that I'm populating my collection using. So what I'm probably looking for is refresh field, or my field descriptors equals this. Then here I will check if field descriptors is null, as opposed to this try thing again. So that would look like so that's what this one would be. If I made this return something, this would be a method that does something and returns something. The try get field descriptors is a common pattern, at least in .NET. So like a dictionary.try get value or dictionary.try get whatever. That's a thing. So I'm not inventing something new by making a try get method that returns false as well as the thing that it found, or returns a Boolean as well as the thing that it found, if anything. It's the refresh field descriptors that does the process of populating a collection and then returning that collection. So what I'm kind of looking at there, is this actually a thing? Getting here without it being populated. Good question. Thank you for asking these questions. It has to be because as we saw, the issue is when I'm trying to do this find user templates, the field descriptors list is empty. But I have changed it to wait until the active table is changed. And when the active table is changed, then what? Shift F12, please. Yeah, the only thing that I'm doing is updating the table and then calling the onActive data table changed. Am I calling that anywhere else? Or invoking it, sorry. I am not invoking it anywhere else. So yes, it is absolutely possible that the process for updating data file, is it? Yeah. The process for updating data file dot table def or dot refresh field descriptors has not run by this point in time. In fact, where are the only places that it's called? In set target type. No, that was refresh field mappings. I know how to read. I know how to read. Set data. Which is crazy because set data happens in my file reader, but it's not guaranteed to happen if you make your own file reader. And you're just directly setting the data set. Although, did I make it to where the only way you can set the data? Yep. So never mind. You have to have called set data, which would then call refresh field descriptors. And this happens when a file is picked. So this will always be called. So why then, when we were listening for data file changed, was refresh field descriptors not populating our list of our dictionary of field descriptors? That's going to need a full debug. In fact, I'll put it here. And the thing that we'll watch for is this handle file picked. Nope, not this handle file picked. The input file dot on change. Handle file selected. You there. Okay. Are you running anywhere? You are. Please stop. Well, EBD's got great questions. He's a planner. He's like, is this really even needed? Do you need to check for that? Is this situation even possible? And I'm like, every situation is possible. He's like, but is it plausible? Is this actually going to happen? I'm like, no, it's not. I guess we'll go ahead and put a breakpoint here too. May as well. Exactly. And I love it. I really, really appreciate you coming up with these thoughts because they're not things that I really think about. I'm like, I'll do the work and write the extra code. But this ultimately is going to be like the core part of this library is going to be open source. So I don't want it to tell lies if any of the changes that I'm making are to the underlying core library. We'll just return for now. This will most likely never be the case. This is essentially what I would have the refresh field descriptors do, just to talk through what I would have done if I had not been asked, are we even going to be missing field descriptors by this point ever? I would make a method that takes a second parameter. So instead of being a method with an overload that takes an optional parameter, it's a method with a you know the word I'm looking for. It's a method that takes the string table name as a second parameter. And if you provide the table name, then it will return the collection of field descriptors at that point in time. And the way that it would do that is I would essentially have that method call this method without the table name, and then perform this operation. Try get field descriptors. And then return the value that it was given, or that it found. But it may never be the case that field descriptors is null here. Because if we already have a data file and an active table, then we would have called set data, which would have called refresh data field, or refresh field descriptors, refresh field descriptors. All right, that immediately hit the breakpoint we were expecting it to. Where are you pinned? Weird. So this is right after the file was selected and our mapper state is not null. And so we're going to close the transform preview window if it was open. We're going to prepare our request, and then we will notify that a file was picked, which will also do this internal, which we probably want a breakpoint there, for data state. So I'm going to pin you, and the other one is already pinned. Okay, so this one was handle file picked. We're just going to breakpoint there so that we can step through pretty much everything that we talked about, including the perform file read request. So this gets fired. You're fired. Perform file read request. And I am going to go up here to the active data table for this one, because that's the event we're ultimately listening for. Okay, if the file is not null, which it isn't, it was a file provided by the browser into the browser. Then here goes our import file that I did not step us through earlier. So we'll go ahead and read through it now. This is my implementation that uses Excel Data Reader. We check to see what kind of file it is. If it's not either a CSV or an Excel file, then we say we only know how to read Excel or CSV files at the moment. But you can implement your own and be able to read OpenOffice files or Google Sheets or whatever else you want to read. Text files even. Tab files, tab delimited files. Speaking of, that's probably where that happened. I was trying to test a tab delimited file because Excel Data Reader is able to do any structured file like that. And yeah, I didn't. I wasn't thinking. It would have hit this and failed. Anyway, point is, open the read stream to the file, and then if it's a CSV, do the read from CSV. If it's an Excel workbook, do read from Excel. If it's OpenOffice, then read OpenOffice, which is not implemented. Otherwise, throw not implemented for whatever file type it is. So to read from Excel, no. I pushed F10 and I didn't have a breakpoint say yeah. Okay, but when we read from Excel, we get it as data set and we are returning the data set. That data set then gets returned and this is going to be hard to track down. What call do you read here? Wait, no. Dang it, it skipped over all the stuff that I wanted to read. Then it would have went to process dataset. Dang it. Are we already past process dataset? No, we're not. We're okay. We're okay still. So we should be reading the Excel file. Hopefully, provided it didn't time out on us. I think it timed out. Or not, or not. We're good. Are you going to continue? No. What does that mean? Does that mean that you stopped running code? Cancellation token is not used. This method can be marked as static. I'll take the static. Let's do that. But are you really not used? Okay, anyway, we're gonna make it back to this point. I might just have to restart the thing, but it looks like it's not in break mode currently. So I should be able to pick a different file. No. Dang it. Debugging is much a test of your patience as your understanding of the code. Like, the thing that I don't like is code that can time out. Like a debugging session that if you don't move through the debugging part of it fast enough, the error that you get is a timeout error because you're debugging an API call or you're debugging something else. And since I don't have an end-to-end test that only debugs the code, I'm doing it within the application, which does apparently time out, even if it's running as Blazor server, which it should never time out. I've got good aim. You should see my bathroom. Okay, so perform file read request, read from Excel. We finally made it here, so we know that it's picking the Excel file. This will give us back a data set. So once again, this is your implementation of reading files. We do get back a valid data set with at least one data table. And that one data table has a whole bunch of columns and rows. 34 columns and 332 rows. So now we're going to process the data set that we just got for this to generate an imported data file object. And to do that, we initially create a new data file object, find out if it's CSV. I don't remember why I needed to check if it's CSV or not, but we'll find out eventually. Something about, oh yeah, there's only one data table. Right. Regardless, if it was a CSV, we would do the set data process that we'll come to here shortly, but you can see it's doing refresh field descriptors. Since it was an Excel workbook, we got to this point and now we're going through every single one of the sheets, checking for sheets that have data in them. So all of the tables that were generated from the Excel workbook took the name of the worksheet. So if I had multiple worksheets in this workbook, then I would get multiple data tables back in this data set. Since there was only one, I mean, if we're here, oh gosh, here's another one. This isn't really a lie, but I don't need to check for if this is not CSV, because if it was CSV, it would get captured up here and we would return on all paths. So this doesn't need to be there. I'm not going to remove it now because we're in a debugging session, and hot reload will say, I can't apply those changes. Data reader service line 111. Okay, so use data table was supposed to, if a specific sheet was specified, where would the sheet be specified though? In the request. Okay. So if a worksheet, so you provide a workbook that has multiple worksheets, but you only want one worksheet from that workbook, you can specify which worksheet you want as part of the request. If it's null, we get all of the worksheets from the workbook. So if we are not using a specific, or if we are using a specific worksheet, then we only pull the data from that worksheet. Otherwise, you're going to see that we go down here. We're going to go through all of the worksheets. Well, it's essentially all of the tables that were generated from the worksheets, and make sure that we're only keeping the ones that have more than 0 rows. And we're keeping track of those tables. And then we are clearing out all of the tables. If we change the number of tables, we clear out all of the tables and then re-add only the ones that we're keeping. In this case, there was only one table. That table had data, and so the number of tables to keep equaled the number of tables in the data set already. And now we're doing the set data process. And this is all before that event has fired so far. So we're clearing out our table definitions and we're refreshing our descriptors using the default options. So we didn't specify any parameters. Since we cleared our table definitions, only if not exists there are no table definitions that would exist because they're all cleared out. There are 0. Data set is not null. For each table in the list of tables in the data set, check to see if we have the only if not exists option selected and that table does not already have field descriptors and the number of field descriptors is greater than 0, but that will not be the case. Then the updated descriptors is going to be the set of columns transformed into an imported record field descriptor data set. Duke a data set. Better than baby set. So to be for each column, create a new imported record field descriptor, which is a reference to the data file, a reference to, or I guess just the name of the table that this field is for, the name of the field itself, and the data type for that field. And that's all it is. And we are actually doing this if we are able to add, or if we are not able to add that field, that new imported, that new set of imported field descriptors to the table, then we update the existing one from the table. That's all this means. Since it's brand new, we are now adding it to the table definitions, which now contains one set of table definitions that is named XSS AMP, excess samp, and it has 34 field descriptors. So yes, the table definitions gets populated. And then we do the same for the field mappings. If we have a target type, which we don't currently, but if we had a target type, we would create the field mappings. But right now we don't really care about that because the only thing we cared about was that set of field descriptors. Okay, we're done processing data. Now we're setting active data table because we set the data file. I forgot to mention that. Oops. I hate it when I do that. I clicked on the play button to play to this line, and for some reason when I am hovering over something and I want to click to put the cursor on that line, I always end up clicking on either the continue debugging or the how long did it take to do this thing. It's so annoying. Anyway, so when we set the data file, we also set the active data table to the first table in that data file. When we set the active data table, then we call on active data table changed. When on active data table changed gets called, we saw that it does the thing in the data file picker. Data file picker. Not data file picker, in the lab data service state here on active data table change plus gets find matching user template. And that's where we are currently. Okay. If data file is null, it's not. If active table is null, it's not. But there you go. I guess that answers the question that TBD asked. And again, it's a very smart question. It's one that I don't ask myself enough. Is there ever a way for us to get here without field descriptors? And there isn't. All right. And I guess that means that now this request here is going to be a valid request to the server, or I guess we're running on the server, so there wouldn't be a request to the server, it would just do it. But if we were running in WebAssembly, this would be a valid request where this field descriptors list is now populated. And we will get back that's another thing. We're going to do this as many times as active data table gets set. And it gets set more than once. I think we saw that it gets set 3 times. The second time it gets set to null, and the third time it gets set to, because data file is getting set twice. And the third time it gets set to the first table in the data set. Why does data file get set twice and active table gets set to null? Anyway, let's just see what our table definitions look like. Yeah, so never null. And then we do the request to go find our templates. And we are refreshing field descriptors only if not exists. So here, only if not exists is true, and the table definitions does contain the field descriptors for table name excess samp. So we do nothing. And that was part of try matching fields. So when we load the data set, when we load the file and we have the field mapping target type, then we just try automatically matching the fields from the imported data file to the target type properties. That's what this process is. But yeah, here's our matching template. Why are you null? Field descriptors is still 0. Okay. Okay. So I did make a mistake. We have not sent the corrective values yet. So who's calling you? Data import an async call stack. Find matching user templates. So we're still in the find matching user templates method, which is in lab data state here. But I thought that we just saw that field descriptors was populated. But this is a different one. This is on the data import page. Oh no. Wait, no, what? What? Look at this. Our table definitions has the, oh my gosh, I'm going to put a breakpoint here and we're going to find out when this gets cold. I know, I took too long. I know. Okay, while we're waiting for this to re-lunch, I want food. I'm going to read the two jokes that Dukabot gave us. I mean, one from OtherBot and one from Dukabot. And joke number one is, if a child refuses to sleep during nap time, are they guilty of resisting arrest? And Dukabot says, I accidentally took my cat's meds last night. Don't ask me how. I said it right this time. You're repeating yourself, Dukabot. Get a new joke from Dad Joke API next time. Abadus. Anyway, hi Abadus. President Nutshers was responding to TBD's comment about debugging being as much a test of your patience, blah, blah, blah. And he said, this is so true, it hurts. Hi. And like, this is where automated testing would be very, very helpful, but I don't know how to do an integration test for this. Or do I? I have an integration test for this to test that table definitions are populated when I create a new file, when I create a new imported file object. Ask me how I know. ESP multi-threaded code. You have ESP code? I've been trying to awaken my ESP for the longest time, and there's already a library out there for it. I know, especially is what you meant. Handle file selected. Right, so we don't care about this breakpoint anymore. Yeah, multi-threaded debugging, quantum debugging. We don't care about the read file anymore. We know that all of that stuff works. What we care about is the callback. We don't care about process data. What we care about is the callback for find matching templates versus the other callback that happened in the page directly, in the data import page. Why am I doing that other one at all? We don't care about this breakpoint. We don't care about set data because we know that set data is the one that calls this. But what we do care about is that this is happening before any of those other events got invoked. President Usher's like, oh, nasty, nasty, stop it. No multi-threaded, multi-quantum. We don't need to do that yet. We don't even have our light bodies yet. How are we supposed to do any of the quantum stuff? All right, refresh field descriptors. Again, we don't care about this yet, but it's happening before the events are getting called. And here is the first event getting called. Data import page find matching user templates. Table definitions is not null. And it contains a table definition for excess SAMP, and there are field descriptors. In my try get field descriptors here, wait, are we actually at this breakpoint? Because it's kind of hard to tell. What happened to my yellow arrow? Anyway, I think we're at this breakpoint. Table name, active data table is null, table name is null. So once again, we're listening to the wrong change. But why are we doing this anyway? Why are we doing this twice? Here's one that's happening in the page itself. And, oh man, I didn't even hear the bleep, the bleak. And Stony Eagle's like, don't blame me. Well, I'm blaming you. So we're doing one call here and one call in our lab data state. Okay. Anyway, before I continue debugging this, hello, welcome in. Happy, wonderful Friday to you. AAAAAAOA. I've heard much about you. I usually end up lurking on your stream now that I know about you. Yeah. I'm not necessarily like, oh gosh. Oh gosh. Okay. I wasn't actively looking for design help. However, you were recommended to me if I am ever in need of design help, which I am in need of design help, but I wasn't explicitly asking for any just yet, especially since this is a work product. I'm doing this for my job. We do have an open source version of the library that I'm working on, and you are very welcome to contribute to that library in the UI realm. So right now, this is what the UI for that particular open source library looks like. The sample app. This isn't even a, I don't know, this is just a sample app, but the components themselves could use basic styling that would look nice in anyone else's apps. So pretty much it's everything that you see here without the, where did my dockable toolbar go? Without the dockable toolbar, without the layout, I guess. Oh, the dockable toolbar isn't there yet because we're still debugging. I might have tattletaled on you, says Stony Eagle. Okay. Welcome into all of the raiders, though. Anyone that is new here, I am One Lion. This is a slice of my workday. Earlier on Fridays, from about 4 hours ago until 2 hours ago, I usually have a community day, which is when I just talk with you guys, hang out with you, have conversations about whatever topics you're interested in talking about. But then after community day ends, I go back to my workday stream. So what you're seeing me work on is work products from the place that I work at. I maintain a whole bunch of different applications, web applications, data-driven applications, and yeah. So here's one of the applications, for example. This is called RMA Water. It is an application that our users use to track our wells that we have located throughout our site. Our site is the Rocky Mountain National Wildlife Refuge that had a large chemical snafu happen a million years ago. It got cleaned up, and so we're just now monitoring all of the water quality, soil quality, and making sure that there are no bad chemicals in there. And doing regular EPA reporting, and other environmental agencies tell us that we need to report specific data. So this is RMA Water, one of the applications that I maintain. Then there are applications for sending samples to labs. There's applications for getting those samples back from the labs and importing them and putting them into our database and performing analyses on them. And all of them eventually get put into another database that this thing queries to generate the reports. And then we put the reports together in a big PDF every year. That is our annual summary report, and a whole bunch of mini reports each month, each quarter, each. We have a three-year. We have a whole bunch of reports that we need to do. So yeah, that's what I do. .NET Dev, Blazor. I'll keep reading through chat and catch up. But yeah, I'd give you a shout out even if I didn't need your help, but I wouldn't mind a designer's eye and being like, you know, you could improve that by something easy. Design help, everyone's a critic. And then Stony says, this one has the skills to back up his claims. I know. I believe it. That's a Dukasoft thing. He just now did that. That's awesome. Thank you. I'm saving my pennies up. Liquid Sky is going to cost me for design. Yeah, TBD is one that could really use a designer for his core project, Liquid Sky. His Dukasoft being amazing again. There's a description of Liquid Sky, but just think of a project management and planning platform that you use, aka Jira, Azure DevOps, anything else that you might use where you have a project, you put in all of the things that you need to do for that project, you check off items, and you eventually deploy the project. He's just making one that I think is more thoughtful, more mindful of the target audiences. The project managers get to see the things the project managers care about. The developers get to see the things the developers care about, and work gets done. I just think it's being done in a very smart way. So he just has very little desire to learn UI. Similar to me. I mean, I've definitely tried my hand at it. I do enjoy doing design work. I got better at Figma over the past year. And so, yeah, it was a lot of fun. But I'm still nowhere near a good designer. All right, the easiest design change you can do is more space in the cells to help readability. Yeah. So for this, I don't know if it makes a difference to you, but this is a line of business application as well, which means that the core users are going to be users of systems that are not notoriously intended to, or not notoriously, that are notoriously ignorant of good design patterns. They're not commercial products that are intended to attract large audiences. They're just, here's the functionality. It does everything you want it to do and more even with one button click. It's not pretty, but you can read it. So yeah, I'll finish stepping through. Actually, we're done stepping through this. Let's just go to the app. This is the application I'm currently working on. Again, I'm not super duper trying to design it at the moment. This is something that just needed to be done because we just need it. But that said, again, if you do have suggestions for improvements to the design, for example, well, colors to begin with. Like, if you can tell, this is the color scheme I've used on the applications just because it's easy. This was the RMA water app, same color scheme. Water management app, same color scheme. They're all coming from my initial template that I put together for my CSS stuff. The different ones are the legacy applications that I have not updated the UI for. For example, RTrack. So I threw this login page together initially thinking I was doing a good design job, and then when I finished with it, I'm like, Hello, 90s. How are you doing? But then everything else in the application is from the original, what the application looked like before I even got here. But it works better, of course. No bugs at all. But yeah, so for this application, it really was just import a file, see the data from that file, transform it to another type of file, and then see the transformation values and then export it to a database. And look, my templates are now showing up. Even though we haven't made any code changes yet. That's stupid. What I want to do though is get rid of, who's calling this? Handle data file changed. Let's get rid of this. Which means we're no longer calling this, because this was a duplicate call. And I don't actually have this button anymore, but this was a debug button. This is also not there. So I'm going to be deleting these once I validate the functionality. AOA is saying main point going to be to not surprise the user with drastic changes like moving buttons from up to down, left to right, all that. Yeah. And I do have a pretty consistent UI approach for the applications themselves. Like when I have a dialog window, I have the like if it's a question dialog, for example, I have the buttons in the footer on the right of the dialog itself with yes on the outside. Cancel is typically, I don't have it here, but cancel is typically a link button for things where I don't want them to accidentally click cancel thinking that they're submitting. So I make it styled different. I actually make it a button link. Which I don't have styled in my app currently, but I usually make it a button link, which is of course background and border none and duration underline. So I have it more like this. Yeah. And that way they know the button that looks like a button is going to be the positive action. Usually I have, or not usually, in the past I have tried to make the negative action button danger and the positive action button success, but that has also caused a lot of issues. Yeah, and then the alternating table rows, is that what someone else is saying that you're agreeing with? More breathing room between the items, make it a lot better. And alternating lines colors. So I think you're indicating table striped maybe for the table itself, which I could do, definitely. What I do have is, because all of these rows match up one-to-one, is when you hover over a row, which I want to improve the hovering effect, but when you hover over a row and the user is trying to compare what the input value is to the output value, then they'll get a line all the way across the two tables. Yeah, that too. So even if I did use the colors to indicate danger versus success, colorblind people might still have trouble telling the difference between the two colors that I choose, regardless of what they are. So that's why the visual effect itself would be the one that I would opt for. I would also keep the hover. Do I have any examples of this so I can just stop talking about it and show the actual example? Let's try chain of custody. Oops, save as. Oh no, I actually used, so here's a perfect example where my cancel button is muted, and when you hover over it, then it does the underline plus turning it blue. And then my save button is, it has a hover effect, but it's really not that noticeable. But anyway, it has a hover effect, and yeah, that sucks. I created a chain of custody record in live, but nobody saw anything. Chain of custody record doesn't exist. Here's an inconsistency. Here the cancel button is a gray block instead of the same situation. Okay. Anyway, lots of things to do. I hadn't really styled too much for my input controls here. I just kind of threw stuff together for this thing. Nothing at all. You didn't miss anything at all, Stony Eagle, because nothing happened. But yeah, that's where I'm at currently. We did get the template. The template does get applied. Except, oh my goodness. This lag, this UI lag is so annoying. And that keeps happening. And I really don't know what that issue is. We're going to fix all of these UI quirks though. So those are more UI functionality than design issues. Yeah. Okay. Point is, we're able to reload mappings, and we can see that, yes, that mapping actually did apply correctly. There are no issues. None of these columns have indicators. Like if I chose a template where there were issues, we'd get UI lag. And we go across and we'd see, all right, here's a whole bunch of transformation issues. Our database is expecting for this value to have no more than one character. And here you have it mapped to 2 characters. So the user would then go into the mapping. They'd see that here's the one that has the issue. At least one of the values has an issue. And they would say, okay, what I actually want is for this to map from SO to S. And now, yeah, and again, this, thrown together, not very well designed. Those were the comments that I was making, and I think that's when Stony Eagle was like, I know someone that's really good at design, but I wasn't really looking to do better design just yet. But I do want this to be designed better. I just want to learn better design principles. One thing that I can share is my actual attempt at design. So we had a stream project called the Financial Management Tracker on GitHub. That's the Blazor Component Library. Try again. So the Financial Management Tracker, again, side project, something that we did while I was working at a different job and couldn't stream my work product. We created this tool that you could use for tracking your finances by manually entering your receipts, deposits, transfers. And as part of that, I wanted it to be designed like a commercial product. So this is the design I came up with. I'm happy with it because it's better than any design I've ever made. But of course, it is not the best design ever. I was really stuck on how to get, for my landing page, I was really stuck on how to display these different sections in the various form factors and what to do with the white space behind them. Because it just... So this would have been one where I would have been extremely happy to receive tons and tons of your opinions and guided knowledge. Opinions and facts. But alas, we're done with that project. It does still exist though. It is still in GitHub. I do plan on finishing the rest of it, which it's fully functional, but the rest of the app needs designed and updated because I still want to use it in place of my existing Access database. Okay, you're done. This works. Do we get a toast? We don't get a toast for that being successful or failing. So we need to create a toast for that eventually. But first, removing all of the callbacks here, we were able to get the templates, which is perfect. Toast. I love toast, which means we get rid of that. We get rid of all of these unused variables. Oh, I love cleaning things up though. But yeah, thank you again, AAOA, for your raid. I love lurking on your stream. I love hanging out. Now that I know you, or now that I know of you, I try to catch your streams whenever I can. Like earlier today, I was lurking on it. And then like 16 million people were also streaming at the same time that I support. Clean this up. Save. You are not running anymore. Okay, one of the items that we wanted to get taken care of is done. Yeah, thank you again. So never ever, I hope you never feel obligated to stick around longer than you want to. I am happy to see your face or your avatar, your name show up in chat, but there's never any obligations. Did that UI tag lag happen before you added the scroll feature? It wasn't, but wait. It wasn't as prominent is what I should say. So not the UI lag that we were having during Community Day stream, but when I was changing templates with the preview window open. So what happens is it closes the preview window, updates the field mappings, regenerates the preview data, and then shows the preview window again. The thing is that I need a loader so that the user doesn't think the application stalled, because that's what it feels like. But the one for what was happening during the stream when we were doing the GitHub PR process, I I restarted my computer, so hopefully that would take care of it. All right, so we've cleaned up some code. I love cleaning. But yes, I think what also happened was while it was loading the preview, I was moving my mouse around the screen because I was expecting to be able to still do stuff. And that was causing the events to trigger for on mouse enter for all of these. And so on top of trying to regenerate the new table and update the currently selected item or currently hovered item, it was processing all of those callbacks. Okay. Yay. Cool. So the other one that I wanted to get cleaned up again was the actual lag that's happening from hovering over stuff. So we know we have a CSS selector that is much better to use when we want to, for example, have a row hover for a table. And I'm going to show that in use here again while I throw stuff off my desk like a cat. My wife and I came up with a theory on why cats like to knock things off of tables in that slow way that they do. They don't just come up to it and like whack it off the table. They just kind of nudge it towards the edge. It's like they see us humans picking things up with our opposable thumbs. And so they go over to an object and they're like, all right, all I have to do is put my paw towards it and pull it back and it's stuck to my paw. Because that's what humans do. They put their paw on things and they get stuff stuck on their paw. I should be able to do that. And they keep trying, and they're like, screw this. And then they knock it off the table. I know that's not the case, but it's still funny to think about that way, at least for me. My cats have never done that for some reason. Do you not use your opposable thumbs in front of them? I kid. Okay. So right now, this is the behavior of hovering over a row. It's lagged. It's happening because of an event callback setting a class on that row when mouse enters. And then having that callback get fired every single time you move your mouse over a row. If we, however, used data table display.scss, I love writing Sass. Wait, what? I thought that I turned that off. What? Stony Eagle is like, is that how it works? It is. Is that a platypus? I love platypusauruses. Oh, it's one of Draw Curiosity's ducks. It looks like a fat chocobo. Shout out to Draw Curiosity. She was over in Bit Gamey stream earlier. She does, so I called it variety streaming because she does do a variety of things, mostly in the artistic and science realm. But she introduced me to a term that makes sense to be called. But on YouTube, when there are people that do varieties of things, they're called personality streamers or personality bloggers, vloggers, whatever, which makes perfect sense because you're not really necessarily going there for the content, you're going there for the person and their personality. So yeah, why not personality streamer? So she is a personality streamer. She's very smart. She does have a degree, a PhD, and does love to talk about sciencey things. This month, this upcoming month, or maybe this month, she said she's going to do a video on contraception and the things you didn't know you need to know. I think I got the title right. And so she's going to provide some education in that arena. But she also talks about other topics that are sciencey, as well as she does do some art. She does video editing. And her name is Dr. Inés Dawson. And she lives in España. But yeah, check her out. Cool. So what I'm really confused about is that my table does have a selector for hover. And I'm changing the background to the table background. Why am I changing it to the table background? This should be the hover background. This should be the use table hover. This O1L use table hover. Okay, so that's what's going on there. Once that applies, then we'll now see that the CSS version of the hover takes effect immediately, and now it's suddenly not taking effect at all. Like the style was applied for a half second and now the hover effect doesn't work anymore. Excuse me. If we set you to hover, are you taking the right color? No, it suddenly went back to, oh wait. Suddenly went back to here from an isolated CSS file in the Armits file import utility. Does not make sense. Okay, we're gonna blame it on my youth. And where's this one coming from? It's in here twice. Is it in table default? Oh, okay, I see what I was doing. I see what I was doing. So in my table defaults, my TRTDs are taking the effect of on hover that we set the background. And here I was trying to undo that hover effect because I didn't want the double-eyed monster thing. But does that also mean that there's another one being set somewhere else? What did he say? A double-eyed monster? What does that have to do with anything? Yes, shout out to Irish John Games, who is currently streaming. He's streaming game development. His game Rise of Piracy. You can check it out on Steam on the Microprose website because Microprose is his publisher, which is amazing because he has been working hard on that game for a long time. And then to get to a point in his career where his work life was just totally messing with him. His team was messed up. His work situation was terrible. And he took a while off because he could support that, but he couldn't sustain that. And so he started looking for another developer job, another app developer job, which he wouldn't have been happy in there either, and ended up getting Microprose as his publisher, which was awesome. And now he gets to work on Rise of Piracy for real as his for real job. Doesn't have to worry about this app development mess. I love app development. I love doing this. I'm not in the same boat he was in, but he was miserable. And now he gets to do not miserable things. And thank you for the shout out on his channel. Okay, so there's definitely something going on with my styles not applying correctly, even if I recompile the CSS. So we're going to stop and restart the application. President Usher is saying, yeah, I prefer business app programming. It would ruin games for me if I worked on them. It's definitely ruined applications for me, especially web applications. Thank you for clarifying, Dukasoft. You're amazing. You're even modding for me on Irish John's channel. Oh my gosh. being a star mod. What was I saying? Applications being ruined, web applications, because like I'll be interacting with an application and I'll be like, why are you behaving like this? Somebody should be able to fix this. One example, I don't know if I can show this on stream because it might have my address and stuff. You have my address? Am I logged in? Okay, I'm not logged in. Which I don't think I'll be able to look at stores if I'm not logged in. But one example is this site. And they have a products page. When you're picking your groceries and stuff from a particular store, they have a products page that has an infinite scroll. That when you scroll down to the bottom, it starts loading the next items. But for whatever reason, the first set of items will lag and be extremely slow to scroll through. Then when you get to the bottom and it starts to scroll through the rest, it does this jumping around the page thing. And it's like, shouldn't you be able to to get that fixed. It's been like this for over a year and it still hasn't been addressed. And it's like the thing that users interact with. It's the part where they pick their groceries. So anyway, it's a very, very bulky and heavy feeling UI. Even though it looks clean, it's very nice and organized. But the experience is terrible. And then he says that, and all he has is a data table where when you move your mouse around, it feels laggy. But I'm fixing it, aren't I? Okay, good. This is what I expected to see. So this is the reason that that I set the rule to make it look like there is no hover effect on the table, because of the lag of the callback, of the event callback. So is there a way for me to improve the behavior of the event callback, but make it feel as clean? Make it feel as responsive as the regular CSS hover. Because it's exactly the effect that I want, but I need to affect two separate elements on the same page at the same time, based off of the hover of one element. And I don't know if it's because I'm using Blazor and it, like especially in Blazor server, it needs to go to the server, do the render, give back the rendered page, and then apply the diff to the existing DOM. I guess the way that we can check that is now that we really have Blazor WASM, now that we have render mode auto, this should be Blazor WASM. We'll know this by this process here doing a call to the API, which it did. Okay, and so here we go. This is all running in the client and it's lagged. It's like completely lagged. Or it's working as expected on a single threaded application. It's not lagged. It's doing however many calls it is from where I moved my mouse. Oh, I forgot to get rid of the console write line. Do that now before I forget. Those are fine. That's fine. Is it fine? Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. We'll leave you like that for now. So essentially it's executing all of the event handlers. And then once it's done with the last event handler, then it's doing a re-render. Yep. Because if I go one at a time, wow, that's still really slow for one. So I think my theory is falling short. Anyway, since all of the UI stuff is being processed on the client itself, I totally thought that it would be more responsive. And here we can see it's less responsive when it's running on Blazor WebAssembly. Wow. Okay, let's blame cache. Let's blame cache. So let's start over from no data, no cache in the running application by stopping the application and rerunning it. And then instead of loading a file first and then switching to WASM, we will load it. It's going to load in server. The WASM runtime will download pretty quickly. Usually by the time we're done logging in. And then we will switch to WebAssembly by refreshing the page. And we will know, and I'm going to choose a CSV since those seem to be more performant in the app for whatever reason. Okay. So here's what I think. It's taking the exact same amount of time, but we aren't getting those asynchronous UI updates. We aren't getting a stream of updates coming from the server. Instead, we're getting one update after all of them are done processing. Okay, what can I do about that? So that's what we're tackling right now. That is our primary goal, is cleaning that up. We aren't going to make it to the third thing that I want to do, which is to start adding new transformation rules. So as a reminder, this library is all about taking some Excel or CSV structured file that has columns of data with an optional header row and transforming it into a target C# type. Doing that transformation, the user, the one that is doing these transformations, would specify how to transform the the values. Where do I get it from? So like file name, where does that come from? Well, it doesn't come from anywhere specifically in the file. It comes from a combination of the lab itself, the lot number, and there is no such thing as lot, so I need to find out a way to create a lot. But they call it something like batch group number. Analysis batch. And lab-lot. Oh, and then the installation ID. So here's an instance where I want the installation ID to be first, but I've already put these two here. So I want to be able to reorder. Instead of needing to go back and remake these rules, I want to reorder them. But since I don't have that, we're going with the lab, analysis lab, the anal lab. And there is no installation anywhere, but the installation is a fixed value. So one of the value transformations that I want, one of the things that I want to be able to pick from this dropdown is constant value. But for now, we're just going to use the interpolate transformation rule and put AR for Rocky Mountain Arsenal. Or is it RM? RM underscore. Actually, we'll just do RM. And then the analysis lab, and then the lab sample ID. And to print these out, I would like to make a UI so that the user doesn't have to remember the syntax for accessing each of these. But this is $0, this is $1, and this is $2. But this is the format of the file. So then if I try to preview this, then it'll crash just like that. Why did you crash? An item with the same key has already been added. That is an interesting point. I'm using lab sample ID multiple times when I could have used any field for the first one, and that's not lab sample ID anyway, it's lot. It was that batch analysis batch. But that means that I can't pick the same field multiple times, even if I'm extracting different things from the field at the different steps. So let's say I am using the lab sample ID somewhere else in order to extract the first number from it. And then I'm doing another regex that will extract the letters that are in the analysis ID. And then I'm concatenating those two things in a different way. I should be able to select the same field more than once. And I have another note that I need to take care of. But yeah, using same import field in a single mapping rule value transformation, specifically combine fields. Causes item with same key has already been added. I just don't know which dictionary it's already adding it to. All right, we need to go back to, just to clean this up, data reader service, line 111. There is no 111 in data reader service. Yeah, there is. We had this is CSV check from earlier that we don't need because, again, if we enter this, we will return eventually. So we know if we get here, it is not CSV. Yeah. Okay, and a shout out to Bit Gamey, who was streaming earlier, had a fantastic stream. We rated him after Community Day while I was taking a quick break and just enjoyed our times over there. He's working on the game for the science streams. It's kind of a game jam type thing. And it's called Need for Seed. No, I didn't stutter. No, I didn't miss any letters. That's the name of the game. And it's a fruit fly who is doing an endless runner trying to collect bananas. I mean, eat all the bananas as possible. Banaba. And there are no innuendos at all during his stream, especially regarding that name or the plot. Moving on. Map fields, no error this time. Show me the preview table. And now we get RM underscore Eurofin Sacramento and then this number. Ben Anna. Hygienikus. Hygienikus was there. I can tell you all about it. Okay, I think we're good to go. We're done with that explanation. And found another bug. So we can get rid of this. I can take this note and make it a work item later. Yeah, okay. So I guess what we're going to do for these last 5 to 10 minutes is see if we can understand what's happening with the hover as far as the way that it's telling the UI to update. So that's going to definitely be on the data table component. This is where it starts. This is how it starts. Take a shit on back on my Does anyone like the 1975 here? I love them. They're amazing. Do mouse over. So on do mouse over, it is supposed to cancel whenever you do multiple mouse overs in a row. So if you move your mouse super fast, it's supposed to ignore the previous mouse movement. The issue is that I'm throwing an exception to do that. And the thing is that this doesn't really make too much sense to do here, because the only thing it's doing is invoking an event that is going to happen external to this. So if this is the only thing that gets called and there is no way to cancel this, so there isn't a way for me to pass in a cancellation token to my invoke async, which there should be, then there's no reason to have a cancellation token here. So this really doesn't make sense to have like this. Okay. So how do we handle it then? And then I can get rid of all of these cancellation token things. Right. I remember something that I did to try to address this. And that is that I had a timer, which I'm not using anymore. So never mind. What I had was a timer that would set the previous row index and the current row index that we're trying to hover over. And if they match, then don't do anything. But it would wait until the mouse stopped moving for at least 20 milliseconds. And because 20 milliseconds is not a lot of time, it still happened a whole bunch of times when I moved the mouse up and down. So then I tried upping it to something like 200 milliseconds, which is enough for typing, but it's a very visible delay when you're moving your mouse and expecting to see the row hover immediately. Okay, so that's not a good idea. Bad timer. What else then? What else can we do? We're passing in the currently hovered row, and the currently hovered row is the thing that we are checking here. So is it possible that finding the current row's item number index is what's causing the lag? We can easily check that by, I'm going to set it up here just because it's so much easier to do, but var cur row index is 0. Otherwise, I would have to open up a new curly brace here. So like at curly brace, declare my variable here. It just doesn't look as pretty. That's right, I said pretty. So then we will do, at the end of this, we'll do cur row index plus plus. In this case, it doesn't matter if we did plus plus cur row index or cur row index plus plus. Actually, you know what? It'll be a lot easier for us to do. Oh no, it wouldn't. Cur row plus plus. Awesome. So Dukasoft says, I'm learning how to use render fragment today, as in doing it, not a tutorial video. It's such a game changer. definitely. I do love using render fragments. Here is an example of a render fragment that I am using. So if the user decided that they wanted to specify their own way to display table rows, they could do it here. And they would get the current row for whatever component they're using. Although that's for the rows. I thought I also had one for the entire table body, for the list of rows. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Point is that we should now no longer be doing a index of, and we are just getting the number straight from here and comparing a fixed number to a incrementing number. So we'll try this, see if there's any improvement. Wait. There is a gotcha in Blazor. Wait, why are you still angry at something? There is a gotcha in Blazor that if you are using a variable that's declared outside of a block during your rendering, when that variable updates, the value for that variable will update in everything that's rendered inside of the block that you're using it. So what I mean is that here, if we, where are we? Here. If we update cur_row index, then from 0 to 1, then the previous row that used to be index 0 will have a selected rows.contains that current row index that we're at. So by the end of it, we're going to be at 334, 333, I forget what the number was. And so every single one of these checks will be checking against value 333. So the way to address that is to create a local scoped to that block variable, my row index, for example, equals cur_row index, and use this value. Anyone else? Anyone else? Cool. Okay, we almost got. Wondering how you can do a list of render fragment. You can, but there is a there's an interesting thing. So you did ask me about the card, and you can find it in card the way that I did it, based off of a tutorial from DevExpress. You're allowing for multiple child component or child content, and those children are registering themselves with the parent component, and then the parent is deciding where they're going to be displayed. So if you look at card, and specifically card body, because a card body can have multiple card texts, for example. So what I do is I allow all child content. It doesn't matter what type it is. I'm not expecting a specific type on this render fragment. All child content. And when a new child is added, let's say it is a card text, it could be a card link as well, but let's say it's a card text, it will register itself with its parent. And so you can see that in card body, it is passing itself down as a cascading value. A card text is expecting a container element of iCard body. So if you looked at this code here, then you would, there's so much to this. Then you would see that the container child element has a cascading parameter of a container element, which is the parent. So it registers itself with the parent. Then the parent keeps track of the list of those elements. And then for each list, for each item in that list, where's the UI? here it is. For each item in that list of card texts, we will print out a new card text, or we will render the new card text. Yeah, I'm definite you'll figure it out, but that was just a hint. That way you get some exposure to it. You'll be able to think about that. Yeah. Oh man. Oh, look at that. So absolutely yes, it was the index of that was causing a major lag point. Since I left the hover on, we're getting the weird double effect. Because it's going this fast, I don't think it's going to matter if we tell this thing that we don't want the hover CSS, because our manual class setting is working fast enough. I just got to find that. Datatable.sas. Anyone? Anyone? Datatable.razor.sas. What happens? Save, wait for it to apply. And there we go. Now we don't have the double hover, but we are getting the hover effect applying relatively fast, at least in Blazor Server. It is a little bit slower when I have the preview open, but it's not as slow as we saw it earlier. I'm going to refresh to get into Blazor WebAssembly, pick a file. Oh man. Okay, so we're gonna have to figure out Blazor WebAssembly. The reason it works so well on Blazor Server is that Blazor Server can use multi-threading. Blazor WebAssembly uses specifically the browser to do all of its processing, and at the time of this stream, the browser does not support multi-threading. It's supposed to in the future, but it currently does not. So I want to know. Yeah, we will figure out how to handle this in Blazor WebAssembly. And the app is running as WebAssembly. Okay, but yeah, so that's going to be it for our stream. I am happy with that as far as Blazor Server is concerned. I want to improve Blazor WebAssembly. I'm going to work on that on Monday morning when I start my workday. And then maybe by the time the stream starts, I'll have it figured out. Maybe I'll still be working on it and we'll figure it out during the stream. But the other thing that I'm going to want to do on Monday's stream is add add additional mapping types. So adding that constant value mapping type, adding constant value as a selectable field here. That way, if you do combine fields and you only want one of them to be a constant value. Our new bug that we just found that is using the same field name in a combined fields will cause an error. Why didn't it cause an error this time? It had an error that said something about the key already exists in the library. And so you're broken, but it wasn't broken. So I don't know what that was. Okay. I mean, it is still working faster in Blazor WebAssembly. I don't see the user really trying to do this to highlight the rows. I kind of see them looking at them one by one to compare, if they're going to compare at all. So I don't think it's terrible behavior. Still would be nice if that moved faster. Okay, doesn't matter though. That is the end of my stream. That is the end of my Friday workday. I hope you guys enjoyed your time here. I enjoyed having you here. You've been amazing. All of your energies, those of you that have been lurking, those of you that have been interacting, you've been wonderful. And you have nothing to apologize for, TBD, since there is no requirement, but I appreciate that you wanted to be there. I really do. I will be back again on Monday at 9:30 a.m. Mountain Time, UTC -7, and currently it is 3:30 Mountain Time, UTC minus 7, which is this time UTC 2235. So yeah, there you go. Do some math. But that's going to be it for me for today. We're going to raid someone that was in here earlier. I think. Did we raid Kenny on Wednesday? Is that who we raided? Who did we raid on Wednesday? Draw Curiosity. Right. I remember. Okay. I will be AFK lurking on Kenny's stream after I say hello and thank you and all that stuff. I will also be AFK lurking on Irish John's stream, but I'm going to go pick up my groceries because they were just now delivered. So says my doorbell. Yeah. As mentioned before, all of my VODs get posted to YouTube, unless, of course, I do something stupid and tell them not to post. Yeah. VODs on YouTube. Next stream on Monday. Check out TBD on Monday. He'll be working on developers.stream. And then Tuesday through Thursday, he'll be working on Liquid Sky. And then developers.stream again on Friday. Open source project is now officially open source since I did publish to main. You are welcome to contribute to it. I'll talk more about it on next Friday. I'll try not to do anything on it until then. Okay. Ciao for now. I refuse to accept these constraints, Dukasoft. And then his message got deleted.